"Fight back, you scaly freak!" snarled Jacob Henry as he pummeled Antares in the locker room of Galactic Academy. The star athlete's fist slammed into the Lemnorian's face, leaving him broken and bleeding on the floor. News of the vicious assault rippled through the space station like an ion storm. Shock and outrage gripped the students and faculty. How could such brutality occur at their prestigious institution? Suspicion immediately fell on Xyloth, Antares' hot-headed Lemnorian friend, known for his vocal opposition to Jacob's xenophobic bullying. Station security wasted no time throwing Xyloth in the brig. But Emily Carter smelled a rat. The tenacious human journalist and friend of Xyloth knew he was no angel, but this didn't add up. She pored over the security logs, only to find a suspicious gap right before the attack. Someone had scrubbed the footage, a cover-up at the highest levels. As anti-Lemnorian fervor reached a boiling point, a disturbing rumor surfaced in Emily's digging. Whispers of a secret fight club where human cadets unleash their worst impulses, brutalizing alien students for sport and perverse entertainment, all under the guise of demonstrating human superiority. If she wanted to clear Xyloth and get to the bottom of this, Emily realized with a sinking feeling, she'd have to infiltrate the shadowy underworld of the Fight Club herself. She'd have to pose as one of them, a bloodthirsty human out for alien humiliation to gain their trust. But the thought of sinking to their level, even as an act, made Emily's stomach churn. How far would she have to go to maintain her cover? Could she tap into the primal human aggression that Jacob and his lackeys wore like a badge of honor without losing herself in the process? The clock was ticking. Xyloth faced expulsion. The Lemnorians grow more restless by the day, and with them, the specter of an interspecies diplomatic catastrophe. Emily steeled her nerves as she prepared to descend into the Academy's heart of darkness, to unmask the rot festering behind its civilized facade and confront some uncomfortable truths about her own species. The real test of humanity's character, she suspected, lay not in their ability to dominate, but in their restraint and compassion, in how they chose to treat the other. Perhaps it was time to teach her fellow humans a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Emily's heart pounded as she stepped into the abandoned cargo bay, the pulsing beat of illicit music filling her ears. The stench of sweat, blood, and primal aggression hung heavy in the air. Around the makeshift ring, human students bayed for violence, their faces twisted in cruel delight as an alien fighter hit the ground with a sickening thud. Emily fought down a surge of revulsion, steeling herself to play the role of Killer M. She pushed her way to the front, elbowing past whooping spectators, and locked eyes with Jacob across the ring. He flashed her a wolfish grin, raising his beer in mock salute. Emily returned the gesture, a sneer plastered on her face while her insides churned. Her gaze flicked to the ring, and her blood ran cold. Xyloth's sister Lyra crouched in the corner, her scaly hide glistening with sweat and streaked with purple blood. She faced off against a hulking reptilian, his fangs bared in a vicious snarl. Emily's hands curled into fists as the truth hit her. The Lemnorians were being forced to fight, blackmailed into this nightmare. The reptilian lunged, his claws raking across Lyra's face. The crowd roared, a tidal wave of twisted bloodlust. Lyra reeled back, violet blood spattering the canvas. Something snapped inside Emily. Principles be damned. She couldn't watch this brutality for another second. "I've got winner," she shouted, vaulting over the barricade. The reptilian wheeled to face her, hissing in surprise. Emily didn't hesitate. She drove her knee into his gut, doubling him over, then slammed her elbow against the back of his skull. The reptilian crumpled, out cold before he hit the mat. Stunned silence gripped the cargo bay. Emily stood over the unconscious reptilian, her chest heaving, adrenaline singing in her veins. Then, slowly, the human crowd began to cheer, a chant of "Killer M!" building like a war cry. "Not bad, new blood," Jacob said, sauntering up to the ring. His eyes glittered with dark amusement. "Stick with me, and you'll go far in this outfit." Emily flashed him a cocky smirk. Even as her stomach roiled, she was in. But as Jacob draped his arm over her shoulders, steering her towards his inner circle, Emily caught Lyra's eye. The look of desperate gratitude on the young Lemnorian's face hardened Emily's willpower. She would maintain this charade as long as it took to burn this vile club to the ground, and see Jacob and his cronies face justice. The ringleaders welcomed Killer M with raucous backslaps and offers of spiked punch. Emily threw herself into the part, laughing at their crude jokes and joining in their railings against the scaly freaks and tentacle heads. Bile rose in her throat as she spewed the hateful slurs, but she choked it down, smiling all the while. As the night wore on and the fights grew more vicious, Emily wormed her way deeper into Jacob's confidence. She goaded the ringleaders into ever more grandiose boasts, surreptitiously recording every word. When a drunken Rowan began crowing about how he'd put that lizard punk Antares in the infirmary, Emily had to bite her tongue until she tasted blood. "I didn't know you had it in you, Ro," she said, forcing a note of admiration into her voice. Thought for sure Jacob was the one who laid that beat down. Rowan's chest puffed with pride, too soused to realize he was being played. "Nah, that was all me. And Terry squealed like a Baraxian piglet when I—" Emily fought down the urge to vomit as Rowan droned on, gleefully recounting every blow. Her hidden recorder drank in his confession, the key to exonerating Xyloth. But as the fights wrapped up and the drunken humans stumbled back to their dorms, Emily knew her mission was just the beginning. She had to find a way to free the Lemnorians and shut down this sadistic game once and for all. But she couldn't do it alone. As Emily slipped away into the night, a desperate plan began to take shape. To infiltrate the club's vault, she'd need an ally on the inside. And she knew just the troubled soul who might flip. Jacob's own brother, Tristan. Emily blew out a shaky breath as she keyed in an encrypted message to Tristan on her holocom. She was about to ask the younger Henry to betray his own flesh and blood for the sake of what was right, to join her in a dangerous game of deception that could cost them both everything if they slipped up. Her finger hovered over the transmit key, the weight of the impossible task ahead threatening to crush her. But then she thought of Xyloth rotting in the brig, of Lyra forced to bleed for the amusement of monsters in human skin, of every decent alien soul who'd suffered at the hands of this twisted human power cult. Emily's eyebrows furrowed with unshakable focus. She would see this through, whatever it took. The rot at the heart of Galactic Academy ended here, ended now, even if she had to burn her own humanity to the ground to do it. With a resolute stab, Emily sent the message to Tristan and vanished into the shadows, more certain than ever that the real measure of her species lay in the choices they made, not the power they wielded. It was time to show her fellow humans what true strength looked like. Emily's encrypted message to Tristan flashed on his holocom. "Meet me in Hydroponics Bay 3. Urgent." Tristan's heart raced as he slipped through the dimly lit corridors. He found Emily hidden behind a cluster of nutrient-rich algae tanks, her face a mask of iron will. "I need your help," she whispered, laying out her plan to infiltrate the Fight Club's vault. Tristan's eyes widened. "You want me to turn on Jacob? My own brother?" "I've seen what goes on in that ring," Emily said. "What your brother is part of. It's monstrous, Tristan. You know it is." Tristan's shoulders slumped. He'd tried to ignore the bruises on alien students, the fearful glances, the whispered slurs, but he couldn't deny the truth any longer. "Okay," he said, "I'm in." The next night, as the championship fights raged, Emily and Tristan put their plan into motion. They stalked through the cargo bay, tension crackling between them. "You filthy Xeno lover!" Tristan shouted, shoving Emily hard. She stumbled back, eyes flashing. "What did you call me, you inbred hick?" Tristan lunged and they grappled, drawing the attention of nearby guards. As the Fight Club's muscle moved to break them up, Emily slipped away, racing towards the vault. Her fingers flew over the keypad, bypassing firewalls and encryption. The screen flashed green. She was in. Emily's stomach churned as she scanned the files. Grade manipulation, extortion schemes, teacher blackmail. The conspiracy ran deeper than she'd imagined, infecting every level of the academy. An alarm shrieked. Emily cursed, downloading what she could before bolting. She dodged grasping hands and flying fists, rejoining Tristan in the chaos of the main floor. "We've been compromised," Jacob's voice boomed over the speakers. "Time to prove your loyalty, human versus alien. Fight or you're out." Emily's blood ran cold as she locked eyes with her assigned opponent, a slight aquiline girl trembling in terror. "Please," the girl whimpered. "I don't want to fight." Emily leaned in close, feigning aggression. "Play dead," she hissed. "I'll make it look good." She threw a wild haymaker, purposely missing. The aquiline crumpled dramatically, twitching once before going still. The crowd roared its approval. Bile rose in Emily's throat as she raised her fist in false triumph. This had to end. Later, Emily met Lyra in a forgotten maintenance shaft. The Lemnorian's eyes blazed with fury and pain. "They're torturing Xyloth," Lyra spat, "making him sign a confession. You have to get him out." "I will," Emily vowed. "Soon, I promise." As Emily and Tristan pored over the stolen files, hunting for clues, an unexpected warmth bloomed between them. "I always wanted Jacob's approval," Tristan admitted. "But it's sick. How could I have been so blind?" Emily squeezed his hand. "You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters." A location pinged on the screen. The discipline room. Emily's pulse quickened. "We've got it!" The door burst open. Jacob stood there, rage twisting his features. "You treacherous little worm," he snarled at Tristan. "I'll see you both expelled for this." Tristan squared his shoulders. "No, Jacob, you're wrong. This ends now." Jacob roared, charging forward. His fist connected with Tristan's jaw. Emily's stun blaster hummed to life. She fired, and Jacob collapsed in a heap. "We have to move," Emily said. "Now!" They gathered their allies, human and alien alike. Lyra led the charge as they stormed the discipline room, catching the guards off guard. Xyloth stumbled out, battered but unbroken. His eyes met Emily's, filled with gratitude and tenacity. Emily's fingers flew across the broadcast terminal. "Almost there," she muttered. The doors shuddered. Angry voices echoed from the corridor. "Hurry!" Tristan called, barricading the entrance. With a final keystroke, Emily unleashed the truth. Screens across the academy flickered to life, exposing the rot at the core of Galactic Academy. The doors exploded inward. Jacob stood at the head of a furious mob, his face contorted with hate. Emily and her friends formed a protective circle, ready to defend their stand for justice. The real battle was about to begin. The air crackled with tension as the Fight Club organizers burst through the door, Jacob at the helm. His eyes blazed with murderous rage as he took in the scene. "You little rats," he snarled. Rowan darted forward, brandishing a stun baton. Before anyone could react, he jabbed it into Xyloth's side. The Lemnorian's body went rigid, eyes rolling back as he crumpled to the floor. "No!" Emily cried out, lunging toward her fallen friend. Tristan stepped between her and the advancing mob, arms spread wide. "That's enough, Jacob. It's over." His brother sneered, closing the distance in 2 long strides. "You think you can stop me, you pathetic waste?" With brutal efficiency, Jacob drove his fist into Tristan's solar plexus. As Tristan doubled over, gasping, Jacob grabbed him by the shirt and hurled him aside. He advanced on Emily, who found herself backed into a corner. "You've ruined everything," Jacob hissed, looming over her. Emily's hand fumbled for her datapad. She thrust it forward, screen blazing. "Look around, Jacob. It's already done." Jacob's eyes widened as he took in the Academy's screens, each one displaying damning evidence of their crimes. His face contorted with fury. He lunged at Emily, hands outstretched. A blur of scales intercepted him. Lyra, eyes burning with righteous anger, slammed into Jacob's midsection. They tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs. A high-pitched whine filled the air. Security drones poured into the room, red targeting lasers painting the chests of Jacob and his cohorts. Rowan made a break for the door, only to be clotheslined by a drone's extendable arm. "Nobody move!" a mechanized voice boomed. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Dean Vox strode in, his usually impassive face etched with grim lines. His gaze swept the room, taking in the battered aliens, the cornered humans, the incontrovertible evidence displayed on every screen. "Ms. Chen," he said, voice heavy, "I believe you have quite a story to tell." Emily straightened, meeting the headmaster's eyes. Yes, sir, I do. The next hours passed in a blur. Emily recounted every sordid detail as medical personnel tended to the injured. Xyloth was carefully loaded onto a hover gurney, his sister clutching his hand. Tristan sat nearby, holding an ice pack to his bruised ribs. Dean Vox's face grew more thunderous with each revelation. When Emily finished, he turned to address the room at large. There will be an emergency assembly in 1 hour, he announced. Attendance is mandatory for all students and faculty. The Great Hall buzzed with nervous energy as the entire academy gathered. Humans clustered together, whispering frantically. Alien students huddled in small groups, watching their human peers with wary eyes. Dean Vox took the stage, his normally genial demeanor replaced by stony grit. Without preamble, he activated the holoprojector. What you are about to see, he said, voice ringing out, is a stain upon the very soul of this institution. The evidence unspooled in high definition, fights, blackmail, extortion laid bare for all to see. Gasps and cries of shock rippled through the crowd. More than a few students turned green, averting their eyes from scenes of brutality. As the last file faded, a deathly silence fell over the hall. Dean Vox's voice, when it came, was laden with disgust and disappointment. Jacob Henry, Rowan Thorne, and their co-conspirators are hereby expelled from Galactic Academy, effective immediately. They will face criminal charges for their actions. A chorus of angry shouts erupted from a cluster of human students. Dean Vox silenced them with a glare. Furthermore, he continued, any student found to have participated in or willfully ignored these atrocities will face immediate suspension pending review. The dean's gaze swept the hall, lingering on shell-shocked human faces and vengeful alien ones. We have failed you, he said softly. All of you, the road ahead will not be easy, but I vow to you, this ends now. As the assembly dispersed, Emily caught sight of Xyloth being wheeled toward the infirmary. She hurried to catch up, falling into step beside Lyra. How is he? Emily asked. Lyra's mandibles clicked with worry. Stable but unconscious. The healers say he'll recover. They rounded a corner to find Antares propped up in a hover chair, eyes wide with concern. Xyloth! He called out. As the two friends reunited, Emily felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Tristan, his face a mix of guilt and purpose. What now? He asked. Emily looked around at the shaken students, the concerned medical staff, the visible shift in the very atmosphere of the academy. Now, she said, we start to heal. Heal, Emily finished, her voice barely above a whisper. In the days that followed, the academy buzzed with a mix of shock, anger, and cautious hope. Emily found herself thrust into the spotlight, her face plastered across hollow screens as news of the Fight Club scandal spread. Xyloth, once he regained consciousness, was equally celebrated for his resilience in the face of cruelty. But their newfound status as heroes felt hollow. Emily couldn't shake the image of Jacob's hate-filled eyes, or the trembling forms of alien students who flinched at every sudden movement. The wounds ran deep, and no amount of accolades could erase them. One afternoon, Emily visited Xyloth in the infirmary. The Lemnorian scales had lost their luster, and a network of fresh scars crisscrossed his torso. How are you holding up? Emily asked, settling into a chair by his bed. Xyloth's mandibles clicked softly. Physically, I'll recover, but... He trailed off, gaze distant. Emily nodded, understanding the unspoken weight of his words. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Emily peered out to see a cluster of human students arguing with a tall, willowy alien. You don't belong here, one of the humans shouted. Go back to your own world, Tuvek. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized the name. This must be the new xenosociologist, Dr. Tuvek. Before she could intervene, Chancellor Korath's voice boomed through the corridor. That's quite enough, the interim leader said, cybernetic eye glowing with intensity. Dr. Tuvek is a respected scholar, and you will treat him as such. The students dispersed, grumbling. Emily caught fragments of their complaints. Human exceptionalism, moral superiority. She shook her head, dismayed by their willful ignorance. Later that evening, Emily found herself in a quiet corner of the library, poring over Dr. Tuvek's published works. His theories on interspecies dynamics were fascinating, if controversial. She was so engrossed that she nearly missed the ping of an incoming message on her datapad. Frowning, Emily opened the file. It appeared to be a fragment of a larger communication, encrypted but partially decrypted. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents. Infiltration proceeding as planned. The humans suspect nothing. Once we've sown sufficient discord, we can move to phase 2. The Academy will crumble from within. The message was signed simply T. Emily's mind raced. Could this be from Dr. Tuvek? But why would he want to destabilize the Academy? And who was he working with? She needed to talk to Xyloth. As Emily hurried through the corridors, she collided with a familiar figure. Tristan steadied her, his touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Whoa there," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Where's the fire?" Emily hesitated, torn between the urgency of her discovery and the warmth in Tristan's eyes. She settled for a half-truth. "Just some research I need to discuss with Xyloth. How are you holding up?" Tristan's expression sobered. "It's hard, knowing what Jacob did, what I was blind to for so long, but I'm trying to make it right." Emily squeezed his hand. "You are. We all are." As she continued on her way, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the Academy's troubles were a long way to go. The message on her datapad greatly troubled in her pocket, a harbinger of challenges yet to come. Emily's datapad chimed with an urgent message from Chancellor Korath. She scanned it quickly, her eyebrows rising. "Xyloth," she called out, "we've been summoned." The Lemnorian pushed himself up from his infirmary bed, wincing slightly. "What's happening?" "We're being sent as Academy envoys. There's a lead on Kelvax's network." Within hours, they were aboard a sleek council vessel, streaking through hyperspace. Emily briefed Xyloth on their mission parameters as he pored over star charts. Their first stop, Telora Prime, a bustling trade hub. Emily's skin prickled as they walked through neon-lit streets, acutely aware of eyes following their every move. A gruff voice hissed from an alleyway. "You the Academy kids?" Their contact, a scarred Telorian male, ushered them into a dingy safe house. Inside, a slight figure huddled in the shadows. "This is Revi," the contact explained. "She escaped one of Kelvax's fight clubs." Revi's luminous eyes fixed on Emily. "You're human," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But different." Emily knelt beside her. "We're here to help, Revi. Can you tell us what happened?" As Revi recounted her ordeal, Emily's fists clenched. Kelvax wasn't just profiting from brutality. He was deliberately sowing discord, pitting species against each other. A high-pitched whine cut through the air. Xyloth's head snapped up. "Incoming!" The safe house exploded in a hail of laser fire. Emily dove for cover, pulling Revi with her. Xyloth's scales rippled as he positioned himself between them and the attackers. "Go!" he shouted, returning fire. "I'll hold them off!" Emily half-dragged Revi toward the back exit. A stray blast caught Xyloth in the shoulder, and he stumbled. "Xyloth!" Emily cried out. The Lemnorian gritted his teeth, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Keep moving!" They made it to the extraction point, Xyloth limping heavily. As their ship broke atmosphere, Emily's datapad pinged. Her stomach dropped as she read Tristan's message. Jacob on the loose, classified files on Xyloth's family, stolen. A thinly veiled threat. Emily's teeth clenched. She wouldn't be cowed by bullies, not now. But worry gnawed at her. How far would Jacob go for revenge? With Xyloth recuperating in the medbay, Emily prepared for their next move. Intelligence pointed to a fight club on Urdak Station. She steeled herself, knowing she'd have to revisit her Killer M persona. The station loomed before them, a hive of vice and desperation. Emily slipped into character, swagger in her step as she entered the fight club. The stench of sweat and blood assaulted her nostrils. Her breath caught as she scanned the cages. There, battered but defiant, stood Antares. Their eyes met, a spark of recognition quickly hidden. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't maintain her cover, not with Antares' life on the line. With a roar, she charged the nearest guard, snatching his weapon. "This ends now!" she shouted, blasting the lock off Antares' cage. Chaos erupted. Freed aliens turned on their captors. Emily fought her way to Antares, supporting his weight. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he wheezed. "Just returning the favor," Emily grunted, half carrying him toward the exit. They barely made it to the extraction point. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Emily allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. They'd struck a blow against Kelvax, but the fight was just getting started. Data seized in the raid revealed the true scope of Kelvax's operation. Human collaborators, powerful and influential, bankrolling his schemes. Emily's grip tightened on her datapad as she digested the implications. She looked at Xyloth, still healing, and Antares, commitment burning in his eyes despite his injuries. "We need to take this to Chancellor Korath," Emily said. "It's time to root out the traitors in our own ranks." Ranks. Emily's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Xyloth nodded grimly, while Antares straightened despite his injuries. "I have a plan," Emily said, her voice low and determined. "But it's risky." Over the next few days, Emily worked tirelessly, coordinating with Chancellor Korath and a select team of trusted allies. They set up a complex web of false identities and shell corporations, creating the illusion of a lucrative Fight Club expansion opportunity. As Emily finalized the details, Xyloth approached her, mandibles clicking with concern. "Are you certain about this? The danger—" "We don't have a choice," Emily cut him off. "This may be our only chance to bring down Kelvax's human collaborators." The neutral trade hub of Nexus Station buzzed with activity as Emily's trap was sprung. Corrupt corporate executives arrived in the gleaming shuttles, greed outweighing caution. Council security forces lay in wait, poised to strike. Emily stood at the docking bay, heart pounding as she greeted the first of the oligarchs. "Welcome to Nexus," she said, forcing a smile. "If you'll follow me—" A familiar voice cut through the air. Well, if it isn't the traitor herself." Emily spun to see Jacob, flanked by a group of armed thugs. His eyes blazed with hatred as he raised a plasma rifle. "Time to die, Emily." Chaos erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Jacob's gang opened fire. Emily dove for cover, shouting into her comm, "Security teams, engage!" The docking bay became a war zone. Corporate elites scattered, screaming as council forces materialized from hidden positions. Emily glimpsed Revi, the Fight Club survivor who had become integral to their operation, crouched behind a cargo container. "Ravi," Emily called out, "we need to—" A stray bolt struck Ravi in the chest. The alien's eyes went wide with shock as she crumpled to the ground. Emily's world narrowed to a pinpoint. She vaulted over her cover, sprinting toward Revi as plasma fire crisscrossed around her. She skidded to a halt beside the fallen alien, desperately applying pressure to the wound. "Hold on," Emily pleaded. "Just hold on." A shadow fell over them. Emily looked up to see Xyloth, scales rippling as he unleashed a barrage of covering fire. Antares appeared at his side, face set in steadfast perseverance as he joined the assault. "Get her out of here," Xyloth shouted. Emily scooped up Revi's limp form, adrenaline lending her strength as she raced toward the medical bay. The alien's breathing grew labored, each gasp a struggle. "Emily," Revi whispered as they reached the infirmary, "promise me, you'll end this. No more suffering." "I promise," Emily said, her voice choked with emotion. "We'll stop Kelvax, we'll—" But Revi's eyes had already gone dim, her final breath escaping in a soft sigh. Emily allowed herself one moment of grief before steeling herself. She activated her comm. "Status report." "Most primary targets apprehended," Xyloth's voice crackled. "Jacob's gang has been neutralized." "And Jacob?" A pause. "Eliminated." Emily closed her eyes, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. "Copy that. I'm on my way." As she made her way back to the docking bay, Emily's data pad pinged with an incoming message. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents. A partial decryption of files seized during the operation. Kelvax, she breathed. He's in the Hranrok system. Emily's mind raced. They had dealt a crippling blow to Kelvax's human collaborators, but the mastermind himself remained at large, and now they had a lead. She found Xyloth and Antares amidst the aftermath of the battle, conferring with Council security teams. Emily held up her datapad. We have his location. It's time to end this. Xyloth's scales shifted, a mix of anticipation and wariness. The Hranrok system is isolated, barely charted. It won't be easy. When has that ever stopped us? Antares said, his voice hoarse but determined. Emily nodded. We'll need a team, a strike force to infiltrate whatever Kelvax is building out there. As they began to plan, Emily caught sight of Tristan across the docking bay. He approached, his face a mask of tenacity. I'm coming with you, he said without preamble. Emily opened her mouth to argue, but something in Tristan's eyes stopped her. She simply nodded. As they made their way to brief Chancellor Korath, Emily felt the weight of all they had endured, and all that lay ahead. Kelvax's reign of terror was nearing its end, but at what cost? The Hranrok system loomed before them, a cluster of uncharted worlds shrouded in mystery. As their ship prepared to drop out of hyperspace, Emily addressed the assembled strike team. This is it, she said, her voice steady. Whatever Kelvax is planning, whatever he's built out here, we stop it. For Revi, for all those who've suffered. Let's finish this. The ship shuddered as it reverted to normal space. Through the view screen, a massive space station came into view, its architecture a nightmarish blend of alien technology. Emily's teeth clenched as she took in the sight. Prepare for insertion, she ordered. It's time to bring Kelvax down. Emily's fist slammed against the control panel. Kelvax's base. It has to be here somewhere. The Hranrok system stretched before them, a vast expanse of uncharted space. Xyloth's claws danced across holographic star charts, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Wait, Antares said, leaning forward. That moon, Nelpar, the volcanic activity could mask energy signatures. Emily's eyes narrowed. Set a course. We end this now. As their ship descended through Nelpar's sulfurous atmosphere, the strike team readied their gear. Emily caught Tristan's eye as he checked his weapon. You don't have to, she began. Tristan cut her off. I do, for all of us. The base materialized through the haze, a sprawling complex of angular metal and pulsing energy fields. Emily's voice crackled over the comm. Strike teams, go dark. We hit hard and fast. Chaos erupted as they breached the perimeter. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Emily ducked and weaved, her body moving on pure instinct. She glimpsed Antares leading a group of former prisoners, their faces set with iron will. Emily, Xyloth's voice cut through the din. The central control room, Kelvax. She was already moving, sprinting down twisting corridors. A final blast from her weapon, and the control room door crumpled inward. Kelvax stood before a massive view screen, his reptilian features twisted in a sneer. Ah, the human. Come to save your pitiful species? It's over, Kelvax, Emily snarled, weapon trained on his chest. The crime lord's laugh was cold. You think you've won? My vengeance is already in motion. His clawed hand moved towards a control panel. Emily fired, the blast searing past Kelvax's arm. Warning klaxons blared as Emily jammed his systems, her fingers flying across the interface. No! Kelvax roared. In one fluid motion, he drew a hidden weapon. A blur of scales, and Emily found herself shoved aside. Xyloth grappled with Kelvax, mandibles snapping inches from the crime lord's face. The room shook. Kelvax's eyes gleamed with malice. If I can't have my revenge, neither will you. A series of explosions rocked the base. Acrid smoke filled the air, carrying with it an invisible, deadly payload. Emily, run! Xyloth shouted, his body tensed against the onslaught of toxins. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. In that moment, Kelvax slipped away, disappearing into the chaos. Emily's world narrowed to Xyloth's collapsing form. She caught him as he fell, his scales already discoloring from the bioweapon's effects. No, she whispered, not you too. Antares appeared at her side, his face grim. We need to move. Emily's mind raced. The medbay now! As they half-carried Xyloth through the crumbling base, Emily's voice was steel. Prep for an emergency transfusion. My blood, my DNA. Antara's eyes widened. Emily, the risks are better than losing him, she finished. The procedure was a blur of improvised equipment and desperate hope. Emily felt the pull of her own blood leaving her body, watched as it merged with the cocktail of stabilizers and gene sequences Antares had cobbled together. Xyloth's body convulsed as the infusion began. Emily gripped his hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Fight, damn you. Fight. Hours passed, the base fell silent around them. And then, finally, Xyloth's eyes flickered open. Emily, he rasped, his voice carrying new, almost human undertones. What have you done? She managed a weak smile. Saved your scaly hide. Don't make me regret it. As Xyloth struggled to sit up, his body visibly changed by the ordeal, Emily's datapad pinged, her eyes sharp as she read the incoming transmission. Kelvax, she growled. He's running. Xyloth's newly altered hand closed over hers. Then we follow. Emily nodded, her eyes hard. To the ends of the galaxy if we have to. Their ship broke Nelpar's orbit, streaking towards the coordinates of Kelvax's last known trajectory. An uncharted sector loomed ahead, promising one final confrontation. The hunt for Kelvax stretched across weeks of grueling pursuit through uncharted space. Emily's team pushed themselves to the brink, following phantom energy signatures and cryptic transmissions. Finally, on a desolate moon orbiting a gas giant, they cornered their prey. Kelvax snarled and thrashed as Emily and Xyloth dragged him aboard their ship in restraints. His scales were dull, his once imperious demeanor reduced to desperate rage. It's over, Emily said, securing the final energy cuff around Kelvax's wrists. Your reign of terror ends here. As their ship docked at Galactic Academy, a crowd had gathered. Students and faculty from dozens of species pressed forward, a cacophony of voices rising as Emily emerged with her captive. Chancellor Korath stood at the forefront, his crystalline form glinting in the artificial light. Well done, Emily, he intoned. The Council owes you a great debt. In the days that followed, Emily found herself thrust into an unexpected spotlight. Interviews, ceremonies, and endless debriefings consumed her time. She accepted the accolades with grace, but her mind was already racing ahead to the challenges that lay before them. Xyloth's transformation had stabilized, leaving him a unique hybrid of human and alien physiology. As they walked the academy grounds together, Emily marveled at how seamlessly he moved between both worlds. The xenobiology department is fascinated, Xyloth said, mandibles clicking in amusement. I've become quite the celebrity myself. Emily laughed, but her mirth faded as she caught sight of a group of human students glaring in their direction. She recognized one as a former associate of Jacob's. Not everyone's thrilled with the new state of affairs, she murmured. Xyloth's multifaceted eyes narrowed. The wounds run deep. It will take time. Their work as envoys of interspecies cooperation began in earnest. Emily and Xyloth traveled to outposts and colonies, mediating disputes and fostering understanding. Progress was slow, but tangible. Then came the first attack. Emily was giving a lecture on conflict resolution when the explosion rocked the auditorium. Chaos erupted as smoke filled the air. Through the haze, she glimpsed a masked figure brandishing a makeshift weapon. Death to the race traitor! The assailant screamed, taking aim at Emily. Xyloth's reflexes, honed by his hybrid physiology, saved her life. He tackled Emily to the ground as plasma bolts seared the air above them. Security forces swarmed in, subduing the attacker. In the aftermath, Emily stood before Chancellor Korath and the Council, her voice steady despite the bandages covering her singed arm. This was no isolated incident, she said. The group calling themselves the Purebloods has been gaining traction. They see our efforts at unity as a threat to human dominance. Korath's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. What do you propose? Emily took a deep breath. We need to address the root of their fears. I have a plan, but it's risky. We bring them in, not push them away. An exchange program, immersing the most hardline purebloods in alien cultures. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the council chamber. Korath held up a limb for silence. And who would you choose as your first candidate for this experiment? Emily's eyes hardened. Jacob. The uproar was immediate. Counselors shouted objections, citing the dangers and impossibility of reforming such a committed extremist. Emily stood firm. If we can't reach someone like Jacob, then what hope do we have for lasting peace, she asked. Give me the chance to prove that change is possible. As the council deliberated, Emily turned to Xyloth. His expression was unreadable, but she sensed his support. This won't be easy, she said softly. Xyloth's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile. When has that ever stopped us? The council's decision came down to a narrow vote. Emily's proposal was approved with strict oversight and security measures in place. As she left the chamber, her mind already racing with plans, a familiar figure blocked her path. Dr. Tuvek, the xenosociologist who had once doubted her, now wore an expression of grudging respect. I've been reinstated to assist with your initiative, he said. I hope you know what you're doing, Emily. Emily nodded, unaware of the shadows lurking behind Tuvek's eyes. We're about to find out. Emily stood before the sprawling Krillok hive city, its organic spires twisting toward the crimson sky. Jacob emerged from the central chamber, his eyes unfocused and movements fluid in a way that seemed alien. Welcome back, Emily said, her voice carefully neutral. Jacob blinked, a serene smile spreading across his face. The Krillok have shown me the truth, Emily. We were so wrong. As they boarded the transport back to Galactic Academy, Emily studied Jacob's placid expression. Gone was the fierce intensity that had defined him, replaced by an unsettling calm. Weeks passed. Jacob's transformation became the talk of the Academy. Emily watched as he effortlessly integrated into multi-species gatherings, his former xenophobia replaced by an almost robotic acceptance. It's remarkable, Dr. Tuvek mused, observing Jacob converse with a group of Zelothian exchange students. But at what cost? Emily's comm unit chirped. A priority alert from Antares flashed across the screen. Emily, we've got a situation. Pure-blood splinter cell, armed and desperate. She sprinted towards the docking bay, adrenaline surging. The scene that greeted her was chaos. Plasma scoring the walls, the acrid stench of burning polymers filling the air. A pure-blood extremist, face contorted with rage, held a makeshift explosive device. You won't erase us, he screamed. Emily's hand moved to her weapon, but Antares was faster. He lunged, tackling the bomber. The device detonated in a blinding flash. When the smoke cleared, Antares lay motionless. Emily knelt beside him, feeling for a pulse that wasn't there. Xyloth materialized at her side, his hybrid features twisted with grief and fury. This ends now, he growled, mandibles clicking ominously. In the days that followed, Emily watched as Xyloth argued passionately before the council. His words, tinged with human intensity, carried new weight. We've violated the very essence of what makes us sentient, Xyloth declared. Altering minds is no different than genetic warfare. Emily's gaze drifted to Jacob, seated placidly in the gallery. The emptiness behind his eyes chilled her. Chancellor Korath's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. What would you have us do? Before Xyloth could respond, a series of explosions rocked the chamber. Masked purebloods swarmed in, weapons raised. In the ensuing firefight, Emily glimpsed Korath's shattered form. She fought alongside Xyloth, their movements perfectly synchronized. When the last attacker fell, Emily surveyed the devastation. The council chamber lay in ruins, along with their dreams of easy harmony. Xyloth's hand found hers, a gesture both alien and achingly familiar. We've lost our way, he said softly. Emily nodded, her throat tight. So where do we go from here? They stood amid the rubble, the weight of impossible choices pressing down upon them. The path forward was shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing remained clear. The bond between them, forged in fire and tempered by shared trauma, would endure.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.